The small coastal town of Windermere had its share of peculiar tales, but none was as intriguing as the mystery of the missing heirloom watch. The watch, a priceless piece adorned with intricate filigree and a sapphire centerpiece, had been in the Van Garrett family for generations. It was said to hold a secret, though no one knew what it was. When it disappeared during a gala at the Van Garrett mansion, the entire town buzzed with speculation. Detective Clara Hayes was summoned to investigate. A meticulous and sharp-witted investigator, Clara had built her reputation on solving cases others deemed unsolvable. She arrived at the sprawling Van Garrett estate on a foggy morning, the manor's looming silhouette casting an eerie shadow over the grounds. Inside, she was greeted by Eleanor Van Garrett, the family matriarch, whose steely composure barely concealed her distress. "Detective Hayes," Eleanor began, her voice trembling slightly. "This watch is more than a family heirloom. It is a symbol of our legacy. You must find it." Clara nodded. "I'll do my best, Mrs. Van Garrett. Let's start with the details. Who was present during the gala?" Eleanor led Clara into the drawing room, where the key guests had gathered. Among them were Jonathan Van Garrett, Eleanor's ambitious nephew with a penchant for gambling; Sophia Van Garrett, Jonathan's sister, a reserved and enigmatic artist; Thomas Gray, a close family friend and antique collector; Rebecca Mills, Eleanor's personal assistant, who was known for her efficiency and loyalty; Chef Marco, the temperamental chef who had prepared the evening's lavish meal. Clara began her investigation by interviewing each person. Jonathan admitted to financial troubles but denied any involvement in the theft. "Do I want the watch? Sure. But steal it? I'm no thief," he said, avoiding her gaze. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed uninterested in the watch altogether. "It's a trinket," she said with a shrug. "I have no use for it." Yet Clara couldn't ignore the tension in her voice. Thomas Gray, the collector, was enthusiastic about the watch. "It's a masterpiece," he gushed, "but I'd never jeopardize my friendship with the Van Garretts over it." Rebecca Mills appeared steadfast. "I've worked for this family for 15 years. I'd never betray them," she insisted. But Clara noted a flicker of hesitation when Rebecca mentioned the watch's display case. Chef Marco's frustration was evident. "I was in the kitchen all night. If someone's stealing watches, it's not my concern," he snapped. With no clear suspects, Clara turned her attention to the scene of the crime, the library. The watch had been displayed in a glass case during the gala. The lock on the case was undamaged, and there were no signs of forced entry. However, Clara's keen eyes noticed faint fingerprints on the glass. She examined the room further, finding a small, torn piece of fabric caught on the corner of a nearby bookshelf. It didn't match any of the guests' attire but seemed deliberate, as if someone had brushed against the shelf in a hurry. Clara bagged the evidence and decided to review the security footage from the night of the gala. The footage revealed an intriguing sequence of events. At 10:15 p.m., the library was bustling with guests admiring the watch. By 10:45 p.m., the room was empty. At 10:50 p.m., Rebecca Mills was seen entering the library, glancing around nervously before exiting quickly. Clara's suspicions deepened. The next morning, Clara questioned Rebecca again. "You were in the library shortly before the watch was discovered missing. Why?" Rebecca's composure faltered. I thought I heard someone in there," she stammered. "When I went to check, the room was empty." Clara pressed on. "Why didn't you mention this earlier?" Rebecca's hands trembled. "I didn't think it was important. I didn't take the watch, detective. I swear." Unsatisfied but without solid proof, Clara shifted her focus to Jonathan. His financial troubles made him a prime suspect. She searched his quarters and found several pawnshop receipts, but none connected to the missing watch. Still, the discovery painted a desperate picture. Meanwhile, Sophia's studio caught Clara's attention. Among her canvases and sketches was a small painting of the heirloom watch. The detail was remarkable, suggesting Sophia had studied it closely. When questioned, Sophia admitted, "I painted it as a gift for Eleanor. It was meant to be a surprise." Clara's instincts told her there was more to the story, but the evidence was circumstantial. She decided to revisit the scene of the crime that evening, hoping for a fresh perspective. Alone in the library, she examined the glass case once more. As she leaned closer, she noticed faint scratches near the lock, a sign of tampering. Suddenly, a soft creak echoed through the room. Clara turned sharply, her flashlight illuminating the figure of Thomas Gray. "Detective," he said, startled. "I didn't expect anyone here." "The same could be said for you," Clara replied, her gaze narrowing. "What are you doing here?" Thomas hesitated before replying. I came to admire the collection. It's a habit of mine." Clara's instincts flared. She escorted Thomas to the drawing room and called Eleanor. "Mrs. Van Garrett, I believe we need to discuss the missing watch," Clara announced. The gathered family and guests exchanged uneasy glances. "I've reviewed the evidence," Clara began. "The fingerprints on the glass case match Rebecca's, but her behavior suggests fear, not guilt. Jonathan's financial troubles make him a suspect, yet there's no direct link to the theft. Sophia's painting shows an unusual interest in the watch, but her intent seems genuine. That leaves Mr. Gray." Thomas's eyes widened. "Me? That's absurd." Clara held up the torn fabric. "This was found in the library. It matches the lining of your jacket, Mr. Gray. And the scratches on the glass case suggest someone with knowledge of antiques tampered with it. You're an expert, aren't you?" Thomas's defiance crumbled. "Fine," he admitted. "I took the watch, but not for myself. I needed the money to save my gallery. I planned to return it once I'd secured a loan." Eleanor's expression hardened. "You've betrayed our trust, Thomas. The watch means more than you can imagine." With the confession, Clara retrieved the heirloom watch from Thomas's belongings. As she handed it back to Eleanor, the matriarch's eyes glistened with relief. "Thank you, Detective. You've not only solved the mystery but preserved our family's legacy." As Clara left the Van Garrett estate, the fog lifted, revealing the town bathed in golden sunlight. The case of the missing heirloom watch was closed, but its story would be whispered in Windermere for years to come, a reminder that even the smallest towns hold secrets worth uncovering.